We're now coming into the final stages where we're refining this surface to a finish and then coming to an edge where we can start undercutting, and we will start undercutting now. So we have two sorts of edges. We have a rounded surface which just disappears into the horizon, and then we have a hard edge like this edge of the petal here. And before we start, I would suggest that you put on these carving gloves, which we've put a link to another video. This will stop your hand rubbing on the surface because this will be a final surface and will keep the sweat and grime off. So I'd suggest this sort of glove. Now, you need to take your sharp gouge, and here's the final bit of the surface. We can clean all this up very carefully, like this. Bringing this down, shaping it, getting it how we want it. And then when we come to the edge here, we're going to come straight off. Straight off. We're not going to roll it. We're going to come straight off here. Right. And then when we are happy that this edge is where we want it in space, we can set in. So we will take our gouge and we'll push that in across here like this. And you need only go 1/8 of an inch to make sure that edge is right. So work your way around and so on like this. So we're getting that edge, and that'll follow round where you want it. And that'll be a hard edge. Now when we can get a lot of that from the back, but actually once we're happy with that, what I suggest you do is you start taking some of that back from the front here, undercutting, as opposed to back cutting from the back, and starting at the side grain here as opposed to end grain there. Start pushing that back here. It's not necessary to go all the way through because we don't want the wood splintering off, and then you can work that round. So, well, what sort of angle are we looking at? What are we doing here? Well, we're looking at enough to make a good shadow, and I would say we're probably looking at only about 30 degrees or something like that. So this undercut will be something, if that's square, it'll be something about there perhaps, not 45, but somewhere about that. So peel that back as best you can around here, and then you can clean it up, you know, with your flat gouge. So, and leave that end bit for the back. So we can work our way around here. Now at this point we've got this place where the leaf comes onto the frame like that. So again, we've set that into here. We did that before. Then with our chisel we can stab that in. So again, we've got this nice line going across, and then we have to take this waste out here, and you can do some of that with the V tool, like so. Careful not to cut into that. Where are we? I'm going to have to pull that back even more. There are quite a few little corners like this, and we have to get the frame When you do this with the V tool, don't lever. snap edges off. So straight down, straight back. Clear that up. Get that corner into there. Yeah, all around the frame there, this sort of thing. So we want this square here. We want this bit undercutting. And again, we'll get a lot of mileage from the back, but if we can get that sort of started. So yeah, so there you go, that's undercutting and coming round here undercut. Got a clean corner in there. Might need to get our skew chisel to finish that off. And then this edge will come round here, and this is rolling over. And at the back here, what you're doing is you're carrying on with your shaping. You're bringing the tool round like this, and here on this side the same way. So you're just shaping this around, letting it go where it will, and finishing this corner in the way you did this corner. So that's a sort of overall attack for these big shapes. Undercutting, once you've got the edge right, cleaning the surface, and now finishing it round, keeping everything clean, sharp edges where you can. So that'll be one part. This back petal is quite far back. It's obviously coming right from behind. What we need with this one, it's a low relief, but we need a very good outline. So probably about 1/8 of an inch when you get down there, create this outline around it. That'll be undercut, so this will be very thin. So make sure it's coming around. I've got a middle sort of vein crease in the middle of the petal. So we're going to so that's far back. This petal comes down, so like a little step, and then this petal is coming down and into the bottom of the stamen here. Now that part is very thin because obviously we're pushing that as far back as we can. Be careful not to go through at that point. With this petal, what's happening here is, unlike this one which is coming to another petal, this one is freestanding. So what we want to do is we want to bring this round so it starts undercutting at the back, so we can be right over. So as that comes round, we can go right round and undercutting here, pushing it. You need something a bit flatter. Come round and then push it back in here like this. So there's our undercut there, but it's instead of a hard one on an edge, it's just rounding over. Push that correctly and get your corner in there. And that's coming out of this point here. Yep, so these rounded petals that are free, they undercut like a ball really, with a soft edge. Now I've also thinned these stamens, got them a bit more delicate. This is a weak area of the carving because obviously we're very thin. I've come right back to 1/8 of an inch here, as we said before when we did that. I've kept that edge. This is a sharp edge that can be undercut, so we'll go back a little bit under here. And then with these, I found that a narrow tool upside down, like something like this, just carefully working them both ways is enough. Now the main tricky bit here are these little junctions in there, and the best thing for that is to revert to these little skew chisels, these grounding tools, to get in here like this. And then from there we can push this back. And all this can be worked out from the back. We don't need to worry about it going through. But if we wanted to make a hole, just so we can see where we are, you could just get a tool, a round tool, and just sort of go around like this and take a little bit out, and then you can see exactly how much wood you've got. In fact, we can nibble a little bit of that back. Yeah, so this bit's a little bit fiddly, but here it's coming. Yeah, you need to make sure everything's nice and clean. Then in here, we can start undercutting these, and this bit here. If you find it's a little bit away from the background, when we stab through like this, if this is close to the wood, pressed on the wood, then very little should splinter out. But sometimes, because of the way the wood is moving, there might be a little gap, in which case you could slip a little wedge underneath, something like that. I don't need them here, but you know, that's just to stop that having a loose edge at the other side. So with these petals, these stamens, we have a nice shape here. We have a big head, which we're going to put some detail in, make that more interesting. And we've got good strong lines. We've separated them out. And this is down here, so we don't have to put the details in yet, but we can start there undercutting. See that moving? There is a little bit of a give there. There. So I've now come up here into this leaf, and this petal, and this petal and the top stamens are the same, and the same with the other leaf. So just work. Those are the really what you're doing. You're looking at hard edges here, which we can start undercutting once we've got the shape. We're looking at nice lines, clean junctions, clean surfaces, and as we work our way over it, we're now getting to a point where this is all finished. Another interesting bit in the carving is the way this bottom part of the petal, as it emerges, comes underneath. So there's this lovely turn. And I brought this line back behind here. And this is a line we really want. Again, we can't get this underside really matching the top side because that would be incredibly thin, but we do need to undercut it. So the tool, your tool, is as it creates this nice sharp line, is it going to come around like this. Yeah, let's make this lovely curve and pushing that underneath here. So it becomes part of the undercut that goes along there. Now what might well happen is that it gets too tight in there, in which case you need to go to a bent gouge like this, a short bent gouge, and that will certainly scoop that round better. So that's now undercut under there as it goes in. So when you've done that, you can create a nice sharp line at the back. I've noticed here that this is quite flat compared to that, and although I've said we need to have, we can't make that all thin, I can certainly feel that this needs to be taken away here. So just check that everything is, has gone enough and gone back enough to make a bit of a shadow. And this again will be pulled out like this. So this lump is a sort of stylized open bud. But we'll continue this line down here, and then make sure that this one here I've curled around the back. So instead of sticking up, it's now around the back. I think that looks nice, draws the eye in. So coming down here, and again we can start bringing that down, undercutting, and this line has to look as if it's going to join into there, so make sure that's cut back, and we can undercut like this along here. Of course this is undercut here, and then the bud itself, round that over, push it down a little bit into the space, and then that can be undercut here and finish off to there, and then this little edge here. So we'll put some detail in that, but what's happening is that we're following up the whole line around, and that's all a finished edge in one way or another, either rounded or a sharp edge. I've turned the carving upside down so you can see better what I'm going to do next. This is the bud on the right hand side as we look at it against the frame, and our problem was running the frame through the back. What I did first was I actually finished the carving. I pushed this leaf round and round the back here like this, and in this area there it's just a nice sharp strong edge. I've not tried to undercut or anything, so I'm not trying to find the frame in there. Then I've carved this, and this is undercut, and I've come round here and I've sorted this out. Now this depth, the way I found that depth was to take my little card again, my little bit of plastic, and I went to the side and I made a notch. I hope you can see that there. That's a little notch. That is exactly the height of the frame. And then I went to the inside and I made a pencil mark along here, and then with a flat gouge clean that all up. So I now know that that is the same depth as that, so I know the depth is right because of my little card. But what about the width? Well, for that I'm going to use these calipers, and I found the width of the frame there, just checking that, yep. And then very carefully trying to keep as 90 degrees as possible. I'm going to make little pin marks, little stab that corner in here, so I get a series of points. And then back to my little bit of plastic again. I'm going to join those up. And then I'm just checking that by eye, looks about right, and then I'm going to stab that in with my chisel, which is the equivalent to the marking gauge that we used to begin with. So I've stabbed that in. So that's now the outside of my frame, and that looks about right. So as before, now we can just take this back, nibble this back. I wouldn't go all the way through. With these on this side, when you push through, a little bit might splinter off, but that's all right because we can clean that from the back. This back edge has got to be quite exact because it's a square frame. So we definitely need to not push through, sort of stop a little way beyond the bottom there like that. And then when I've got that sorted out, I will take my flat gouge again, and I'll just, adjust that up squarely all the way along. So that's, I hope you can see that. There, that's now the surface of the frame that goes all the way along. So I'm going to work that as best I can along here. This bit might be a bit tricky here, so we can do that from the back, but certainly I can get it in here and down to this part. I've turned the carving around again, so it's now orientated correctly. Here is the edge along here that I've just made. All this stuff down here, this is waste that we're going to remove when we get round to the back. A little bit confusing. We've got all waste in here. What I want to show you now is how this leaf, but this stalk here goes down into this area there, but you've got this little bit at the back here, and I think that's worth keeping to make something, more interesting here. So what I've done is I've obviously been carving the stem like so, carving down into there and creating this big triangle in here. So the stalk comes down like this, it's just finishing off like so, and the back of that leaf, this leaf here will be here, so I put a V-tool in there. So I created this big shape like that first, and that's going to go round the back. So I need to take a little bit more off there, but I'm in danger of getting away from getting in the way of the camera here. So then this part I'm going to draw is going to be something like this. So all that there is now being taken off. So easy enough, we just stab that in, and nibble it back. Then this will eventually be undercut here. So what we're doing is we're creating this little gusset, if you like, of the back of this leaf going up here. I've actually played around with this a little bit more, and what I've done is I've thinned this part, this stem, so that they both look as if they could fit into this part here. The other thing I've done is I've made this back line here sympathetic with this front line, so it looks as if the whole of this stalk here is encased in this leaf, which of course it isn't, because it would come on the other side, but it's a sort of implied there. And then this I've sort of finessed up into the top, so you can see some of this here. This is all still undercut, so I'm coming round here and undercutting. So I've still got my edge round undercut, and on this leaf on this side I think I'm going to have a little gusset like that, should we call it a gusset, the back of the leaf, just in here to imply the back of that leaf as well. So I will allow for that on this leaf and the other leaves. So okay, that's that part. Okay. This is a little tricky bit in here. You can get so far with your straight gouges, and again, as before, we're looking at a really nice line, nice sharp shadow, and come around, perhaps changing to a deeper, narrow one to come under here. And then this joins in with the undercut there. But as you get down into this part, you can see that you can't get in there because of this edge. Let's take a little bit out of there. So what you have to do is swap to a deep gouge. This is a fairly short one, old one, but whatever you can get to get in there, sort of try and hoik that out as best you can. And our aim is to create a shadow under there, and then see if we can push that in here and start taking some of that out. Again, like this, I'm cutting across the grain and shortening it and just chewing it up so that it should lift out much more easily. And once we get down there, matter of cleaning that up. And then again, this is where these little bent skews can sort of come in at an angle like that. Start taking that out, and you'll end up with a junction. So try and get that clean. As I say, it's tricky, but you go backwards and forwards a little bit, and just looking for a particular tool here. something slightly more curved. Push that down there. So here's the nice shadow that I've created. Now I've finished that off. Get a nice sense of this going round. I've also done some detail on these buds, separating out each part and a little bit at the top. And that's basically just stabbing in with a gouge and you know, setting back. And the same on this one here. So those are two little details. But I've decided not to do anything on these stamens. This is a modern carving, all about shapes and forms. It's a sculptural piece really, so I've left those plain just to speak for themselves. I've taken these round and cleaned up as far as I dare go around the back, and I've gone over the whole surface and the edges with a gouge and finished it off, so it's finely faceted. I can see these facets. I'm not going to sand it. I like that. That's more or less like a paintbrush sort of effect. You know, that's how I carve, and I think it makes it a little soft. So I wouldn't sand it. That'll make it look sort of egg-like. You could choose to sand the frame if you want. I'm not going to do that, but you could sand that really flat, and that would contrast with the slight texture on the surface. So finally, to finish off, I would take something like this, which is a 400 grit, very fine sandpaper, and I would just wipe over the whole thing. And I do that really because people will touch it, and it's nice to have no, especially around these edges, make them tactile. So it's not a matter of sanding, it's a matter of just wiping that over and feeling it and making sure that feels nice. And with that, the carving is sort of finished, except for the back, which is here, and you can see the back now. And that is what we're going to turn to for our final stage.